The palace of the alien queen was silent. The grand hall, which usually echoed with the sound of music and laughter, was eerily still. The royal family's advisors, nobles, and servants all gathered in the chamber, their eyes fixed on the queen. Her presence alone made the air heavy with respect. Queen Zara, a powerful figure in the galaxy, was known for her wisdom, beauty, and unyielding leadership. Her species, the Ardrath, had lived for thousands of years, advancing in ways that no human could even imagine. Yet today her decision would be a shock to all. The queen stood tall in her royal robes, her silver skin shimmering faintly under the soft glow of the palace's lights. She was regal, but there was something different in her eyes today, a kind of seriousness that made everyone in the room hold their breath. "My daughters," she began, her voice calm but filled with authority, "must marry a human." The room fell silent. Not a single person dared to speak. The idea was so unexpected that it seemed impossible to believe. Marrying a human? The Ardrath had never interacted with humans, let alone considered them worthy of such a position. Humans were known to be young and unrefined compared to the sophisticated civilizations of the galaxy. But Queen Zara had spoken, and no one dared to challenge her. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. The advisors exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some thought the queen had gone mad. Others feared her decision might bring danger to their people. The royal court was full of influential figures, yet none of them had an answer to the queen's announcement. One of the advisors, a tall, sharp-eyed alien named Lauren, finally spoke. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, why a human? We have had no contact with them for centuries." The queen's eyes softened as she turned to Lauren. "I know you are concerned, Lauren, but this is necessary. A prophecy has long spoken of a human who would play a pivotal role in the fate of our people. I believe that human has arrived." Whispers started to spread through the room. Prophecies were not something the Ardrath took lightly, especially when they involved such drastic measures. The queen's decision was not made lightly, and her belief in the prophecy carried weight. But why marriage? Why did she think it was necessary for her daughters to wed a human? "I will summon him," Queen Zara continued. "He will be tested, and if he proves worthy, he will become the husband of one of my daughters." There were still many questions left unanswered, but no one dared ask. The queen's word was final. The royal advisor, Lauren, bowed his head. "As you wish, Your Majesty." Far across the galaxy, on Earth, a young human diplomat named Alexander Hughes was preparing for what he believed was just another diplomatic mission. He had been assigned to represent Earth in intergalactic meetings, and though it was an important role, he had no idea how much this assignment would change his life. Alexander was a man of modest upbringing. His family was neither rich nor famous, but they had always taught him the value of diplomacy, kindness, and humility. He was well versed in human history and cultures, and his ability to remain calm under pressure had earned him the respect of many in the diplomatic circles. However, he had never expected that one day his skills would be called upon to meet the royal family of an alien species. The Earth's first contact with the Ardrath had come several years ago. Since then, communication between the two species had been mostly limited to formal exchanges, with very few humans ever meeting the Ardrath in person. The Ardrath were an ancient race, and most humans saw them as mysterious and distant. But now, Alexander was about to step into a world that was entirely unknown to him. The journey to the Ardrath homeworld took several weeks. As Alexander's spaceship entered the planet's atmosphere, he was amazed by the sight. The planet was unlike anything he had seen before. Towering spires of silver and crystal rose from the surface, and the sky glowed with an eerie yet beautiful light. The alien city was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. It looked like something out of a dream, both foreign and magnificent. Alexander landed in a large, circular platform at the heart of the capital city, surrounded by immense structures that seemed to float above the ground. His ship landed softly, and as the door opened, he was greeted by a group of Ardrath officials. They were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "Welcome, human," said one of them, a woman with long white hair and an air of authority. She was dressed in flowing robes, of deep blue, and her voice was calm but commanding. "I am General Tyra. Follow me, please." Alexander nodded, still in awe of the alien world. He followed General Tyra through the grand city streets, noticing the strange and wonderful creatures that roamed the streets. Some were flying in the sky, while others walked on 4 legs or floated in the air, their bodies glowing with strange energy. The technology was unlike anything he had ever seen. Finally, they arrived at the royal palace. The palace was even more magnificent than the rest of the city, with walls made of shimmering silver and large windows that looked out over the entire planet. The entrance was guarded by elite warriors, their eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. Inside, the palace was quiet and elegant. Soft, melodic music played in the background, and the air smelled of exotic flowers. As they entered a large chamber, Alexander saw the queen herself, standing tall and proud at the far end of the room. Queen Zara was a sight to behold. Her long, silver hair flowed like a river of light, and her deep purple eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see into his very soul. Her robes were adorned with intricate designs that glimmered in the soft light, and she radiated an aura of power and wisdom. "Human," Queen Zara's voice rang out, deep and commanding. "I am Queen Zara, and you have been chosen for an important task. You are to prove your worth to my people." Alexander straightened his back, trying to hide his nerves. "I am honored, Your Majesty. I will do my best to represent Earth." But before he could continue, the Queen's next words sent shockwaves through him. "My daughter," she said, "must marry a human, and you are the one who will decide which of them will become your partner." Alexander stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. Marry an alien princess? He had expected to negotiate and discuss peaceful relations, not to be thrust into the center of royal politics. This was beyond anything he had imagined. The Queen's gaze softened just slightly. "I know this is unexpected, but it is necessary. The future of our people depends on the choices we make now. Prove your worth and you may change the course of history for both our species." As the Queen finished speaking, Alexander's mind raced. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain. He had just been swept into an intergalactic struggle he could never have imagined. What lay ahead would test his courage, his heart, and his mind in ways he never thought possible. And the most surprising part? He had no choice but to accept his new role. The journey had only just begun. The journey to the heart of the Ardrath kingdom had been long, but it had only begun to sink in for Alexander just how much his life was about to change. He had prepared for many things in his career as a diplomat, meeting alien civilizations, representing Earth, and participating in intergalactic negotiations, but he never expected to be thrust into a situation so personal. As he stepped out of his ship and onto the grand landing platform of the palace, Alexander took a deep breath. The planet's atmosphere was different from Earth's, but it was refreshing, almost electric. The air carried an unfamiliar fragrance, a mix of flowers and something metallic, like the scent of rain on steel. Surrounded by towering structures that seemed to defy gravity, Alexander couldn't help but stare in awe. The city was like nothing he had ever seen, an endless sprawl of crystal spires, their edges sharp and angular, rising from the ground like the sharp teeth of some ancient creature. Above, the sky was painted in an ethereal shade of violet and gold, a constant reminder that he was no longer on Earth. He followed General Tyra, the lead advisor, who was a striking figure herself. Tall and regal, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to analyze every detail, she led him through the palace gates. The security was tight, and Alexander could feel the weight of the watchful eyes of the royal guards on him. Every step he took echoed in the stillness of the grand hallway as they moved deeper into the heart of the palace. The inside of the palace was just as magnificent as the exterior. The walls gleamed with smooth silver, reflecting the soft glow of the surrounding lights. The floors were made of some kind of transparent material, which shimmered with a subtle light. making the entire place look like it was floating above the surface of the planet. As they entered the royal chamber, Alexander's heart raced. He had been briefed on the importance of this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight that awaited him inside. The room was large and circular, with windows that provided an impressive view of the city below. At the center of the room stood Queen Zara, her presence filling the space. Her beauty was undeniable, and elegance and power radiated from her every movement. Queen Zara had long silver hair that cascaded down her back like a river of light. Her skin shimmered with an almost ethereal glow, and her eyes, deep purple and full of wisdom, were fixed on him as if she could read every thought in his mind. "Welcome, human," she said in a voice that carried both strength and calm. "It is an honor to have you here." Alexander bowed respectfully. "The honor is mine, Your Majesty. I'm grateful for this opportunity to meet with you and your people." The Queen's gaze softened, but only for a moment. "I've been following your species for a long time. We have much to learn from each other. But more than that, you are here for a reason." Before Alexander could respond, she motioned for him to approach the table in the center of the room. On it lay a map of the galaxy, with several planets marked in bright colors. Each marker indicated a different point of interest, but one stood out more than the others, a planet he recognized: Earth. "Our galaxy is vast," Queen Zara began, her finger tracing the outline of the map. "But it is divided. My people, the Ardrath, have lived in isolation for centuries. Our advancements in technology and society have kept us apart from others, and for good reason. We are powerful, but we have come to realize that strength alone is not enough to ensure peace." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "And that is why we have invited you here, human. We need your help." Alexander furrowed his brow. "My help?" "Yes," Queen Zara replied. "There is a prophecy that speaks of a time when humans and Ardrath will unite. The union of our people will bring balance to the galaxy, and together we will restore harmony to the stars." Alexander felt a sense of confusion wash over him. "But I'm just a diplomat. I'm not some sort of hero from a prophecy." "Fierce," Queen smiled, though there was a hint of something serious behind it. "You may not realize it now, but you are part of something much larger. You will be tested, and if you pass, you will become the mate of one of my daughters." Alexander froze. His eyes widened as the full weight of her words hit him. "My daughters," the Queen continued, "are the key to this prophecy. They are the last of our royal bloodline, and their marriage to a human will forge a bond that will change the fate of our people. You, human, are the one chosen for this task." A feeling of shock surged through Alexander. He had expected politics, diplomacy, and negotiations, but never had he imagined he would be asked to marry an alien princess, let alone one of 3 alien princesses who were the royal heirs to a powerful alien empire. "Your daughters?" he stammered. I don't understand. Why me?" Queen Zara's expression softened, though her eyes were still piercing. "The prophecy speaks of a human who will unite our species, one who possesses the strength and wisdom to bridge the gap between our worlds. We believe that human is you, and so you must prove yourself worthy." Just as Alexander was about to speak, a voice interrupted him. It was General Tyra, stepping forward with a solemn look on her face. "Your trials will begin immediately. You will face challenges that will test every part of you, your mind, your body, your spirit. But know this: if you succeed, you will not only win the hearts of my daughters, you will secure the future of our galaxy." The Queen nodded. "And should you fail, there will be no further attempts. The union will be lost, and the prophecy will remain unfulfilled." Alexander's heart raced. There was so much at stake, more than he could have ever imagined. The weight of the Queen's words hung in the air, and for the first time, he wondered if he was truly up for the task. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I'll do my best, Your Majesty. I'll prove I'm worthy." Queen Zara smiled, her eyes glinting with approval. "I believe you will. Now let us begin." As the royal court began to prepare for the first of many trials, Alexander found himself reflecting on the unexpected turn his life had taken. He had never wanted to be a part of some intergalactic prophecy. He had simply been a diplomat, trying to build bridges between Earth and other civilizations. But now it seemed he was the key to something far greater. He wasn't sure how he was going to succeed. He had no idea what the trials would entail or how he could possibly meet the expectations of an entire alien species. But he knew one thing: he couldn't back out now. The Queen's words and the gravity of the situation made it clear that this was his chance to make history. The royal advisors began to file out of the chamber, leaving Alexander alone with Queen Zara and General Tyra. As he stood there, still processing everything, the Queen's voice broke through his thoughts. "Do not worry, human. You are not alone. You have much to learn, but we will guide you." Her words, though reassuring, only added to the weight of the situation. Alexander couldn't help but wonder, was he truly the one chosen by fate? Or was this all just a mistake? The royal palace doors closed behind him. He realized there was no turning back. The palace had become an overwhelming place for Alexander. Every corner, every hallway, every shadow seemed to carry the weight of his new life. The royal chambers, with their intricate designs and gleaming walls, no longer felt like a place of peace. They were filled with expectations, and Alexander felt the pressure on him grow stronger with each passing moment. The first trial was set to begin early the next morning. The Queen's words still echoed in his mind. "You will be tested, in many ways human," she had said. "This is not a simple contest. It is a challenge that will test your very soul." The morning light filtered through the palace windows, casting soft rays over the grand courtyard. Alexander stood at the edge of the palace grounds, surrounded by towering walls of transparent crystal that looked out over the alien landscape. The ground beneath his feet felt strange, like a soft cushion made of some kind of alien material that barely made a sound when he walked. General Tyra appeared beside him, her expression as serious as ever. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady but not unkind. Her presence was always a reminder of how much was at stake. Alexander nodded, trying to gather his thoughts. "I don't know what to expect, but I'll do my best. We will see soon." "Enough," Tyra said, before leading him toward a vast open area in the center of the palace grounds. The first trial was not what Alexander had imagined. He had expected to face physical challenges, perhaps tests of strength or endurance. But what lay ahead was entirely different. They reached the heart of the courtyard, where a large platform stood surrounded by glowing symbols. In the center of the platform was a large crystal structure that seemed to pulse with an energy he couldn't understand. It was beautiful, but it also felt unnatural. "This is the trial of the mind," Tyra explained, her voice calm but firm. "You will be required to enter the crystal and navigate through a series of challenges. The crystal represents the collective consciousness of the Ardrath. It will test your ability to think and adapt under pressure." Alexander was confused. "The crystal? How does it work?" Tyra gestured toward the platform. "It will connect with your mind. Once you step into the crystal's field, you will be submerged into a simulated environment. It will test your intellect, your emotions, and your ability to solve problems. Fail, and you will be trapped in the simulation." The idea of being trapped in an alien simulation wasn't something Alexander had ever thought possible, but he wasn't about to back down now. He stepped forward and approached the crystal. A low hum filled the air as the crystal seemed to react to his presence. He hesitated for just a moment, but then with a deep breath he stepped inside. The world around him seemed to disappear. Suddenly, Alexander found himself standing in a dense forest. The sky above was dark, and the air was thick with the smell of moss and damp earth. He was alone, with nothing but the sound of wind rustling through the trees. His heart raced as he realized he was no longer in the palace. He was in the simulation. A voice echoed through the forest. "Welcome, human. Your first challenge is simple. Find your way out of this forest before the sun sets. If you do not, you will remain here forever." The voice faded, leaving Alexander alone with his thoughts. He knew this was a test, but how would he pass it? He started walking, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The trees seemed endless, stretching far into the distance. The ground beneath him was soft, but it was uneven, making it difficult to keep his balance. He tried to stay calm. He had faced difficult situations before, but this was different. It wasn't just his survival on the line. It was the future of Earth and the Ardrath. He had no idea how he could solve this, but he couldn't afford to fail. As he walked through the forest, he noticed strange markings on the trees. They seemed like some kind of code, symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. He reached out to touch one, and suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted. The forest around him began to change, the trees twisting and warping into unfamiliar shapes. Another challenge, Alexander muttered under his breath. The path ahead seemed to split into two directions. One path was dark, overgrown with thick vines, while the other was lit by a soft glowing light. He could hear the sound of rushing water coming from the glowing path. He hesitated, trying to decide which way to go. The light was inviting, but something about it felt too easy. Trusting his instincts, he chose the darker path. As he walked deeper into the forest, the air grew colder. The sounds of the forest grew quieter, and the ground beneath his feet became more difficult to navigate. But Alexander pressed on, his mind racing. He needed to stay focused, to find the answers hidden in this simulation. Hours passed. The forest seemed endless. His legs were tired, and his mind began to cloud with doubt. Was this test meant to break him? To push him past his limits? He couldn't help but wonder how much longer he could go on. And then, just as he thought he couldn't take it anymore, he heard something, a faint noise in the distance. It was the sound of rushing water. He followed the sound, pushing through the thick underbrush until he found himself at the edge of a river. The river was wide, the water moving swiftly. On the other side, there was a faint light shining through the trees. This was it, the way out. But there was a problem. There was no bridge. The water was too swift to cross by swimming, and the rocks along the shore were slick and dangerous. Alexander knew that he had to act quickly, or the sun would set, and he would be trapped forever. He looked around, searching for a solution. His eyes fell on a large tree that had fallen across the river, its trunk spanning the distance between the two banks. It wasn't the most stable-looking bridge, but it was the only option. With determination, he made his way toward the fallen tree. Carefully, he climbed onto the trunk and began to cross, his balance unsteady as the tree swayed beneath his weight. The rushing water below was a constant reminder of the danger, but Alexander's focus never wavered. He couldn't afford to fail. With each step, the tree seemed to bend under his weight. The river below roared, but Alexander kept moving, his eyes fixed on the light ahead. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the other side. As his feet touched solid ground, the forest around him began to change. The trees twisted and vanished, and suddenly, he was back in the palace courtyard. The crystal's hum faded as he stepped out of its field, his heart still racing. Tyra stood waiting for him, her expression unreadable. "You have passed the trial of the mind," she said. "But the trials are far from over." Alexander breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The trials would continue, and they would only get more difficult, but he was determined to see this through. For Earth, for the Ardrath, and for the future that now rested in his hands. After passing the trial of the mind, Alexander felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. He had made it through the first obstacle, but he knew there was still more to come. The Ardrath were not a species that allowed failure. If he wanted to prove his worth and win the hearts of the princesses, he had to succeed in every trial that lay ahead. As the days passed, the tension around the palace grew. The royal advisors whispered among themselves, watching Alexander closely as he trained and prepared for the next challenges. The trials were not designed to be easy. They were meant to test his character, his strength, and his ability to lead. The Ardrath had no intention of marrying their daughters to just anyone, but Alexander's mind was not only on the trials. As the days went by, He found himself thinking about the princesses. He had met them briefly when he first arrived, but the encounters had been formal and filled with the weight of the queen's expectations. There had been no real conversation, just introductions and polite nods. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something more was unfolding beneath the surface. Princess Zara, the eldest daughter, was strong-willed and proud. She had a fiery temper and a sharp mind, qualities that made her a natural leader. Princess Lyra, the middle daughter, was thoughtful and kind, with a gentle spirit that contrasted her sister's intensity. The youngest, Princess Selene, was mysterious and quiet, always watching from the shadows. Though her beauty was striking, there was an air of sadness around her, as if she carried a heavy burden. Alexander had noticed the way they observed him, as if they were studying him just as much as the royal court was. He wasn't sure if they saw him as a foreigner or a potential partner, but one thing was clear. He was being scrutinized from all angles. It was Princess Lyra who approached him first. One evening, as Alexander was walking through the palace gardens, he saw her standing near a fountain, her gaze distant as she stared at the flowing water. The soft light of the setting sun bathed her in a warm glow, and for the first time Alexander saw her not as a royal figure, but as a person. "Alexander," she said softly, turning to face him. "You've made it through the first trial. I'm surprised." Alexander smiled, though he wasn't sure if the compliment was sincere or just a formality. "It wasn't easy," he admitted, "but I'm glad it's over." Princess Lyra's eyes softened. "You've faced the first trial, but there will be others. The path ahead is not as simple as you may think." "I know," Alexander replied. "I've been told as much." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the gentle trickle of the fountain's water. It was peaceful, and yet Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. "You don't have to do this, you know," Lyra said quietly, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "You could turn back, go home to your people, there's still time." Alexander looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean? I don't have a choice. The Queen has her reasons." Lyra interrupted, her voice soft yet firm. "But so do you. You don't have to be part of this prophecy. You don't have to marry one of us." Alexander was taken aback by her words. He had never thought about turning back, not once. The idea of failing the Queen's trials and returning to Earth empty-handed wasn't an option in his mind. But now, as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he saw a flicker of doubt in her own. Was she questioning the trials? Was she questioning the marriage? "I'm not sure what the future holds," Alexander said carefully. "But I know one thing. I'm here because I believe in something greater. I believe in peace, and I believe in the chance to build a future with your people." Lyra's gaze softened, and for the first time, Alexander saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "And what if that future isn't with me?" she asked quietly. "What if the prophecy isn't what you think it is?" Her question lingered in the air like a challenge, but Alexander didn't have an answer. He hadn't allowed himself to think about the possibility of failure. But here, in this quiet moment, the uncertainty began to creep in. What if he wasn't the right person for this? What if the prophecy had been misunderstood? Before he could respond, a voice interrupted their conversation. "What are you two talking about?" It was Princess Zara, the eldest. Her presence was commanding, and her fiery red hair seemed to burn with intensity. She crossed her arms as she approached, eyeing Alexander with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Lyra quickly stepped back, her expression guarded. "Nothing, Zara. Just a quiet moment." Zara's sharp eyes flicked between them, and she raised an eyebrow. "You shouldn't be wasting your time with idle talk. You have more trials to face. We all do." She turned her gaze to Alexander. "I'm not sure you'll make it through the next one. The trial of strength will be more difficult than the last." "I'm ready," Alexander replied, trying to match her confident tone. Zara smirked. "We'll see. But don't think that any of us are going to make this easy on you. This is more than a marriage. It's about our people's future. If you fail for all of us." With that, Zara turned and walked away, leaving Alexander and Lyra standing in the garden once more. Lyra sighed, her gaze following her sister's retreating figure. "Don't let her words get to you. Zara's always been like that, demanding, unyielding, but I think she respects you in her own way." "I don't want to fail," Alexander admitted. "Not just for you or your people, but for myself. I have a duty to Earth, to my people. I can't let them down." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Then prove it. Show my mother, show all of us that you're worthy of this. The trials will test your strength, but they will also test your heart." As Lyra spoke, Alexander realized something. The trials weren't just about passing tests. They weren't about physical strength or intelligence. They were about something deeper, something intangible. The bond he was forming with the princesses wasn't just a result of prophecy or duty. It was about trust, respect, and understanding. For the first time since arriving on the alien world, Alexander understood that the real test wasn't in the trials themselves, but in the relationships he would build along the way. And that realization made him more determined than ever to succeed. The days that followed were filled with more preparation. The trial of strength was approaching, and Alexander knew it would be even more challenging than the first. But as he trained with the Ardrath warriors, pushing his body to its limits, he felt a strange sense of calm. The fear that had once gripped him had begun to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. He wasn't alone in this journey. Princess Lyra's words echoed in his mind. "Show my mother, show all of us that you're worthy." It wasn't just about surviving the trials. It was about proving that he had the heart, the courage, and the strength to lead. Not just as a diplomat, but as someone who could truly unite two worlds. And as he looked toward the future, Alexander knew one thing for certain: no matter what happened, he would not give up. Not for the queen, not for the princesses, and not for himself. The path ahead was uncertain, but with each passing day, the bond between him and the royal family grew stronger. And perhaps, just perhaps, that bond was the key to the prophecy after all. The morning of the trial of strength arrived with an air of nervous anticipation. The royal palace had never been so still, as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the next step in the prophecy to unfold. The trials had been designed not only to test Alexander, but also to determine whether the union between the human and the Ardrath could truly happen. Alexander stood in the center of the grand arena, his heart racing as he looked around at the massive, open space. The arena, unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth, was a mixture of alien technology and ancient design. The walls were lined with glowing symbols, and above him, alien creatures floated silently in the sky, watching the proceedings. The sun was high, casting a harsh light on the arena, but it felt as if a storm was about to break. Princess Zara stood beside him, her fiery red hair and piercing gaze making her presence impossible to ignore. She looked as composed as ever, but Alexander could sense the underlying tension in her stance. Her arms were crossed and her eyes were focused on the far end of the arena, where the first challenge would take place. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice firm but not unkind. Alexander nodded, his muscles tight with anticipation. "I'm ready. I've faced the other trials, and I'll face this one too. I won't fail." Zara studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. "You're not like the others who have tried this," she said, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "You have something different. Let's hope it's enough." Before Alexander could respond, a booming voice echoed through the arena, signaling the start of the challenge. The queen's voice, calm yet powerful, rang out from the high balcony above. "Let the trial of strength begin." Suddenly, the ground beneath Alexander's feet began to rumble. The earth trembled as large platforms rose from the ground, each one covered in thick metallic armor. On the far side of the arena, a massive creature appeared, its body covered in scales that shimmered like molten metal. It was enormous, standing, nearly 10 feet tall, with long claws and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. It was a creature the Ardrath used for their most difficult trials, a test of both physical strength and endurance. Alexander's first instinct was to run. The oddie creature was terrifying, its presence alone enough to make anyone doubt their ability to survive. But he took a deep breath and forced himself to stand firm. He had made it this far. He couldn't back down now. "You must defeat the creature in single combat," came the Queen's voice once again. "Use all the strength you have, human. Prove that you are worthy of our daughters." The creature let out a low growl and charged forward, its claws outstretched. Alexander barely had time to react before it was upon him, swinging its massive claws with frightening speed. He dodged to the side, barely escaping the first strike, but he knew he couldn't keep running. The creature was too fast, too powerful, needed to think quickly. In a moment of clarity, Alexander remembered his training. The Ardrath warriors had taught him how to use his surroundings, how to move with the environment, not against it. He had to use his agility, his human adaptability. With a burst of speed, he ducked beneath the creature's claws and dashed toward one of the platforms rising from the ground. It was time to turn the tables. The creature roared in anger as it followed him, but Alexander had already reached the platform. He jumped onto it with ease, his fingers gripping the edge as he pulled himself up. The platform was large enough to give him some space, but it was also surrounded by the creature which circled below, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Come on, you ugly thing," Alexander muttered to himself. "Show me what you've got." The creature lunged, its claws reaching for him, but Alexander was ready. With one swift movement, he leaped into the air, landing on the creature's back. He wrapped his arms around its neck and held on as it thrashed violently beneath him. His heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to let go. With every ounce of strength he could muster, Alexander tightened his grip, forcing the creature to the ground. The crowd erupted in cheers as the creature finally submitted, its body falling still beneath him. Alexander stood up, his body trembling with exhaustion, but there was no time to rest. He had passed the trial of strength, but there was still so much more to prove. As he walked back to the center of the arena, Princess Zara approached him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes. Respect, perhaps, or even admiration. She had seen him fight, seen him struggle, and she had witnessed his strength. For the first time, Alexander could see her as more than just a princess, more than just a figure of royal duty. She was human like him, and in that moment he understood the weight of their connection. "You did it," she said quietly, her voice tinged with something he hadn't expected. Warmth. "You passed." Alexander wiped the sweat from his brow and gave her a tired smile. "I couldn't have done it without your help," he said. "All of you have made me stronger. I didn't expect to find allies here, but I've found something even more important: friends." Zara's eyes softened. "We are not so different, you and I. The trials are not just about proving strength. They are about proving our ability to lead, to understand the weight of responsibility. And you have done that." As she spoke, the doors to the palace opened and the queen appeared, her regal figure casting a long shadow over the arena. She looked down at Alexander, her eyes filled with pride. "You have passed the trials, human," she declared. "You have shown that you are worthy of the future of our people." A cheer erupted from the gathered crowd. Alexander could hardly believe what he was hearing. The trials were over, and he had succeeded. But the real test, he knew, was just beginning. Queen Zara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "It is time for the union to begin. The bond between our people and yours is now sealed. Human, you will marry one of my daughters, as the prophecy foretold. The future of our galaxy now rests in your hands." Alexander's heart raced. He had passed the trials, but now the weight of his decision was upon him. He had come here to prove himself, to secure peace for Earth, but now he was about to marry one of the princesses. He looked at the three sisters, each of them standing proudly at the edge of the arena. Princess Lyra, Princess Zara, and Princess Celine. Each had their own strength, their own unique qualities. But the question remained: which of them would he marry? Which of them would become his partner in this new galaxy? The queen's voice rang out again, this time softer but still firm. The choice is yours, human. But know this. The union between our species depends on this bond. You will choose wisely, for it will shape the future of our worlds. Alexander took a deep breath. He had fought hard to get here. He had earned the right to choose. And now the moment had come. He looked at the three princesses, each of them waiting for his decision. And in that moment, Alexander realized that no matter who he chose, the future of the galaxy would change forever. The prophecy had led him to this point, but it was his heart that would lead him to the next chapter.